Hey, B Third Men, Coach Field here, back for a new week and a new lesson. And this week, we're tackling something that seems real simple when you first hear it, but it's actually really complex. And this is the virtue of justice. And so, what I want to do is, I want to challenge you right now. Like, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about justice? Let me guess. It probably has something to do with the judicial system, or most likely it has to do with how people treat you, or if you've been wronged, how you get justice. I think this is a real common understanding um, of the virtue in modern times, mainly because we're not be third, we're be first people. And it's all about like me and how I get what I want, whether that's a conscious behavior or a subconscious behavior. And so, currently, these hot button topics that are in the media, we hear about social justice um, and all of these other justices. Like every person in the world thinks that they should be able to do what they want to do, and they kind of have the right to do it. And while that is a concept of justice, when we think about Christian justice, it goes so much deeper. And the way that we're going to try to unpack this is we are going to pull from the Summa Theologia, which is Thomas Aquinas's great work. And ironically, when it comes to the topic on justice, it's the longest part in his question and answer and explanation of any of the virtues. And so it shows its importance, but it also shows its depth. And so, what is justice? First and foremost, it is an understanding of how we as individuals treat others in right relation, putting God first. Notice that we have to include putting God first. This prevents us from possibly creating some type of justice to a sect of society that would maybe on the surface make sense, but if we leave God out, well, it can't be truly just, not from a Christian mindset. What's a good example of that that's probably hits close to home that all of us deal with in some form or fashion? Well, let's take homosexuality. You know, yes, we want to love the sinner, we want to treat them with dignity and respect, but over the years, they have fought hard in the political landscape to kind of have marriage be seen as just two parties and not between exclusively a man and a woman like God designed it. And so, us choosing to marry people of same sex attraction is actually unjust because it leaves God out. Thomas Aquinas teaches three types of justice in the Summa Theologia. And the first is general or legal justice. This is the individual toward the community. So you and I, in how we act in good relationship towards our community as a whole. I think if I'm going to provide a good example, this might be the one that I struggle with the most, to be honest, because I get so fed up with all the politics and the news cycle, and I don't really know who I can trust that for a long time now, I'm just like, you know what? I'm not really into politics. I'm not going to pay attention to it. And that's really not me acting in good justice. Now, after teaching this and reading this, I'm not going to become this like huge political guru, but I do think that I need to pay attention a little bit more than what I have, because as an individual, I need to ensure that the community around me and how I treat the community around me is in justice. Distributive justice is the second type that Thomas Aquinas talks about, and this is the political community acting toward the individual. And just like my previous example, it's really important for us to keep tabs on what's going on, especially in our local areas. it sometimes tends to be the one that we care about the least. Like we all get ramped up about voting for a presidential election, but it's more of our local leaders that impact our daily life. And this is where we really need to be involved so that we can ensure that our political leaders are doing what is right for the individuals within our communities and that they are acting in justice. And then finally, the one that we deal with more day to day is commutative justice. And this is individual towards individual. And this would be us in relationship to our family members, our friends, but most importantly, us in relationship towards complete strangers. And this is what it means to be third, right? The principle of justice, we're going to put God first, and then we're going to seek to put our neighbor ahead of ourselves. And with justice, it doesn't always, it's not our will bending to a certain level of justice. We don't necessarily have to agree with the right. We don't have to be comfortable with it. We just need to make sure that we do it. That's what it means to be a just person. Like, man, this is kind of hard. I don't really know what I feel about this, or this is hard for me to believe. Maybe it's from the standpoint of what the church or what the Bible teaches. Well, in order for me to act in justice, just because I'm not super comfortable with it, if it's what the scripture teaches, in order for me to be a just person, I need to do that. And so this week, as we dive into the scriptures, we're going to unpack this idea of, what does it mean for us to act in justice? Well, we know that we got to put God first. We got to put our neighbor ahead of ourselves. And I want to wrap up by giving you an example. C.S. Lewis writes this about the virtue of kind of love, but I think it can be applied in this situation. He says, "To love you as I should, I must worship God as creator. When I have learnt to love God better than my earthly dearest, I shall love my earthly dearest better than I do now. Insofar as I learn to love my earthly dearest at the expense of God and instead of God, I shall be moving towards the state in which I shall not love my earthly dearest at all. When first things are first, second things are not suppressed, but increased." I believe we've talked about this principle of C.S. Lewis before, but I think it's a great way to wrap up this idea of justice, something that we could probably spend months on trying to learn. How do we act in justice towards our overall community? And then how do we act in justice towards individual persons? That is what this virtue is pushing us to do. As we grow in our journey to becoming third, understanding and learning the principle of justice is going to be key in our growth. Because when first things are first, when God's put first, then second things can be elevated to their highest. But if we strive to put second things ahead of God, it will never be just. Look forward to opening the scriptures with you this week, and I'm praying that we as men can learn what it means to be just so that we can constantly seek to love and serve our communities in a way that is good and healthy. Thanks for being with me. God bless.